Hi, before I get into this rant, let me give you a little bit of history. I began riding BMW motorcycles in 1991 on a K1. I put 53,000 miles on that K1 in 14 months. That was then replaced by a 1992 K100 RS that ended up with 47,000 miles on it in the following 12 months. That bike was eventually retired with 168,000 miles on it. I have well over 330,000 miles on BMWs in a little under, or actually a little over a 10-year period. But anyway, in 1993, the BMW community started hearing rumors about a new touring bike. Bigger, better, faster, blah, blah, blah. Spy photos were finally sourced in 1995 or 96. And in 1999, BMW released to the United States dealer network in San Antonio, Texas, the intro of the K1200LT. I was very excited. I was looking for a replacement for my K100 RS that I had converted to an LT. And the K1200 RS had already been released. Now, if you remember, the K1200 RS had 130 horsepower, was super smooth, was a great bike except for the goofy seating position where the average person needed 8-inch longer arms to be comfortable. We got to San Antonio and listened to the bullshit orating of BMW specialists and frickin' corporate pinheads, and finally got to ride these. Our test route was from San Antonio out around New Braunfels area, a little bit into the Texas Hill Country, 120-mile loop. I almost ran out of fuel on this test loop. That's how freaking thirsty these bikes are. Now granted, we're running at full speed, 100 miles per hour plus. We did have 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts that day, but a pretty steady wind of 20-25 miles per hour. It was clear, it wasn't rainy or anything, but it was pretty shocking, A, to find out how tiny the fuel tank was, and B, how much of a pig these things were as far as fuel economy goes. But that didn't deter us from enjoying the bike, although it had a few little odd quirks. As these bikes began to show up on the showroom floors and customers started buying them, off the top of my head, I don't recall more than 1 or 2 people buying these while I was employed at the dealership, and I left. The hell did I leave? May of 2000. I don't recall more than a couple people making it away on these without falling over. We had numerous complaints of fairing rattles, shifters breaking off, the ball ends were too damn small, lots of issues of that nature. As years went by and I'm on my own, I finally came to the point where I stopped working on these bikes. They were just too problematic, and for a one-man shop, to tear these bikes down like we're doing today to replace the clutch and the rear main seal, it's going to consume my entire shop. So I kind of got away from these for a few years, and now that I have a full-time tech here to help me, I can start accepting these a little bit more often. I'd like to point out a few things on these that were just mind-boggling to those of us who rode K-bikes. These saddlebags are tiny. If you own one, you know that. The top case, while it was adjustable 2 inches to the back from this position, you had to open it up, unbolt it, move it back. It really should have been on a quick release system. The radio was at best adequate. It was obsolete pretty quickly. When these came out, it was offered to have a CB installed right at the dealer. The trouble was there were no fucking CB antennas. People waited a year and a half before BMW North America finally realized that BMW AG in Germany was never, ever, ever going to have a CB antenna. Why, you ask? Would BMW AG not supply a CB antenna? There's no fucking CBs in Europe. So BMW North America finally pulled their head out of their ass, contracted with J&M, company that makes headsets in Arizona, and came out with a CB antenna. The mount already existed from BMW AG, they just had no antenna. And I'd like to point out that this stupid AM/FM mast without this cover or anything is like $60 frickin'. Crazy money. Moving on to the next item. For the first time ever on a BMW model, they slung the caliper underneath. Why did they put it there? Oh, you'd think because it's easier to change the pads if the caliper's here than it is up there. If that's what you're thinking, you'd be horribly wrong. The reason they moved it down to here was because on the prototype test bike, it was mounted up top like every other K bike, like every other paralever equipped bike. The fucking saddlebags caught on fire. They had to move them down here to get the airflow. Now, the problem with this is the BMW's rotor carriers suck. This disc is worn, the carriers are worn out, so it floats up and down. I had one bike in here with 50-something thousand miles on it that the fucking disc was soaring into the caliper. Another 5,000 miles, it would have been puking brake fluid everywhere. Now you ask, how can you ride and not notice that? When the dealer keeps telling you that the rattling, clunking bullshit is normal, you assume it's normal and you keep riding, even if the noise gets worse. These are overly noisy anyway, even when the carrier is good, because sand and grit gets packed in here and it just grinds and grinds and grinds, scores up the brake disc. Kind of a shitty design if you ask me. These bikes are fucking heavy. I don't mean just heavy, they are fucking incredibly heavy. 900 pounds heavy by the time the average person has it on the road. And for the first time, BMW had a gross vehicle weight rating that was not double what the weight of the bike was. All your old airheads, the bike weighed 400 pounds, it had an 800-pound GVW. Not these. These weighed 900 pounds. They have a 1,300-pound GVW. So a mere 400 pounds. That's not a lot of weight. Pack on one of me and some skinny little 18-year-old chickie and you're at maximum capacity with no freaking luggage. BMW was kind enough to add an electric reverse which runs off the starter button, so you could engage reverse, mash the starter button down, and slowly but surely the rear wheel would turn, unless you had an obstacle to go over, like a 2x4 laying on the ground or anything substantial like that. Then the starter usually just kicks out and it won't back up any further. You'll notice this giant canister of a muffler. It's like you didn't notice the outlet on this. The outlet is actually here. For some reason, the fucktards thought it would look cool to have this extension sticking out the back, but they didn't want the saddlebag to get dirty, so they dumped the frickin' 90-degree elbow inside of it so that it exits out the bottom. Foolish? Yeah. Armrests were not available. We were told at the intro BMW would not be making armrests, that, quote, we are leaving that to the aftermarket to supply. Why you would build a bike like this and not supply armrests is as goofy as BMW cars not having fucking cup holders in them until the 80s. Crazy. During the intro, the corporate pinheads at BMW were so full of themselves and so giggly and all excited about their new Wundertour. They made the claim that it would take Honda over a year to catch up and come out with anything even remotely close to this bike. They were wrong. 3 months later, the GL 1800 was released. More horsepower, better handling, better paint, because the paint on these was not that great. This is a 2005. It actually has better paint. The 99 paint, kind of rough and orange peely like most BMW paint. I'll also add that while this is basically a K1200 RS engine, they fucking neutered it to 100 horsepower instead of 130. The weighted flywheel, I understand. The huge reduction in power made no sense to me. Later on, they bumped the horsepower back up because 100 horsepower was just not adequate on a freaking 1,000-pound machine with another 300-400 pounds of cargo. I thought it was done. I'm not done. To continue with the goofiness, this is the fuel filler. This was, well, I'll give them credit. It was designed to, the fuel tank was designed to be filled on the side stand. Good for them. The last thing you want when you're tired and you're traveling and you're doing a 1,000-mile day is to have to fuck around putting a 900-plus pound pig on a center stand by hand. We covered that, of course, or they covered that, remedied that problem by later on adding what many people found to be a great feature, the electric side stand, center stand. I'm sure that saved many people from getting a hernia. One big problem with all of this is it takes an incredible amount of time to remove all of these panels just to do routine service. BMWs that were always supposed to be easy to work on were no longer easy to work on. The K1200 RS was kind of a pain in the ass compared to the rest of the bikes. This one brought it to a whole new ugly level. In order to replace or inspect your air filter, all of this stuff has to come off to remove the fuel tank because they buried the air box under the fuel tank. It's no longer under the seat like an oil head. It's not easy to access from the right side like an older K bike. It used to be here. Long gone. Now the tank has to come off. As you'll see, you know, if you have one of these apart, it's quite a bit of work to do routine service on this. Engine oil and filter are still easy to change. Rear drive fluid is easy to change, which is good. because these bikes were so heavy and BMW stopped shimming these rear drives properly. These got a very rapid, bad reputation for failing rear drive units. If you've seen my other videos, you know I've explained it. It's not an issue of a poor design. The paralever rear drive works great. There's no problems with it. It's all in the assembly. If you don't shim them properly, and BMW doesn't shim them properly, and the freaking tools that BMW sells are not correct either, they fail. Rebuilt properly, they do not fail. So you ask, how do you check the oil on these? Well, these came with a handy-dandy little flashlight. Why did they come with a little flashlight? Because you can't see the fucking oil sight window without it. Let me get my real flashlight. So your oil sight window in the K-bike is way down there. As we see, the level is just below the dot in the center. Kind of hard to see without a light. The filler cap is here. You know, here, where you got 10 frickin' inches away to get to it. So how the hell do you put oil in it? BMW covered that too. They gave you these. I'm sure they spared no expense in these either. They gave you these special paper funnels. I think they gave you 5. So that you could unscrew the cap, stick this paper piece of shit in here, and spend half the afternoon pouring oil in it. What they should have done was they should have added a fucking umbrella holder here so you could have a little sun umbrella over your head while you're adding oil to your fucking bike at each fuel stop. Assholes. Then we had the issue of nobody really made a tire that was adequate for these bikes. These things were chewing through a set of tires in 5,000 miles. Metzler finally stepped up, as I believe Dunlop did and back then, and came up with a tire that would actually last 8,000 or 9,000 miles. But nonetheless, they are very expensive. Right now, 2013 prices, that rear tire retails for over $300. The front is over $200. Sean brought up a good point. With a bike that weighs 900 pounds, they should come with central vac. Keep your top box clean. To point out how there isn't much room in these top cases. While creative people could get a couple of helmets in here, it's not always the case. Point out some of the another oddity with these. In order to get under the seat to where your battery is located, you had to open the saddlebag, pull this knob, and you better hope you have two hands now. Lift the front seat, lift the backrest, or just the seat itself. There you go. Now you could access that puny shit 20 amp hour battery. As some of you may be aware of, all old K bikes had a 30 amp hour battery. You didn't see these 20 amp hour batteries until 94 with the K1200LT. I think the 93 still had a 30 amp hour battery. Nonetheless, tiny little battery with all this extra shit on here, your AM, FM, radio, 6-disc CD changer, intercom system was available. plus the CB, once you could get the antenna. It's a lot of extra draw on this. Now, you'll also see this little preload adjuster for the rear shock, which, as far as I'm concerned, this bike was severely undersprung and improperly damped as well. But the battery is just a comedy show, and the computer software was wrong on some of these, so you had a constant battery draw. That resulted in people keeping these living on battery chargers, because even the tender could not keep the battery fresh. We had one at the dealership where the gentleman had bought a new K12LT, hooked a battery charger to the battery. So that's the end of my rant. I'm sure there's more, but that's all there is in my pea of a brain right now. As I stated in the beginning, I am not attacking you, the K12LT owner, or anyone who owns a K1200LT. This rant is merely venting my frustrations at BMW for a bike that they spent at least 6 years of R&D and testing, and they came out with what I consider a very much subpar product compared to all the hype that they made about it. It could have been a lot better. My feelings are this bike should have been 100 pounds lighter. It should have been 30 horsepower more. It should have been 130 horsepower when it came out. They should have had removable saddlebags, or at least saddlebags that were bigger than what was offered from 1983 up on the K models. K12LT actually had smaller saddlebags, just fucking retarded for a touring bike. Yes, they added a giant top box, but even that is not all that big compared to what was offered elsewhere. Fairing protection was not incredible. The windscreen, they claimed, was optically clear. A work of art. Bullshit. On our test ride during the introduction, it was like gonna be in a fucking circus mirror. They're not optically clear. Far from it. Most people replace these with an aftermarket shield. So anyway, that's it. If you have one of these, enjoy it. They're not a horrible bike. It's just not what a lot of us expected from BMW back in 1999. There's many of these still soldiering on. This one is here for replacement of the clutch due to either a slave cylinder, transmission input seal, or rear crankshaft seal leak, and we will find out shortly exactly what the problem is with this one. So that's it. I hope you got at least a little chuckle out of this, and if you're pissed, sorry. Everyone has a shitty day. Thanks. Bye.